Dear Liza, there's a hole in my bucket. Dear Liza, a hole. What are we talking about? Faithless and little faithful with much. Will increasing taxes resort to greater accountability? Already with what, quote, little there is, we've seen the KEMSA scam and the latest, which informs the headlines this morning, and that is to do with the bitter sugar release, and we'll get into more details as we look at the front pages. But with me in studio, I can see he is already here as Fred Makajos, co-convener, Movement for Defense of Democracy. We are expecting Joe Halende, lawyer, Askan Kamili, youth policy analyst, and Rudin Hagai, advocate of the High Court. All right, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Nation, and here is that report I was making reference to. Rogue quartet in toxic sugar scam. KEB's boss and 26 other officials have been suspended over the scandal. 1 million kilograms, the sugar 20,000 50-kilogram bags, was flagged in 2018 for missing expiry dates. It was to be converted to ethanol, but was mysteriously released from government stores. 27 is the number of officials suspended, including the KEB's managing director, Bernard Njiraini. Ms. Estangari has been named the acting MD. The bigwigs, the quartet in question, 2 politicians from Mount Kenya and 2 senior government officials, said to be behind the release of the consignment. Court date: 7 officials quizzed by DCI and released on 100,000 shillings bail to be presented in court today. I see also written here 2 MPs and 2 top government officials are said to have orchestrated the release of the condemned consignment in what appears to have been a well-coordinated syndicate to enrich a few individuals without a care about the damage this, quote, poison would cause to the health of Kenyans. We'll be looking a little bit about at this report by Roslino Bala and Moses Nyamori as we proceed. I see some good news also on the front page of the Daily Nation. The wait is over. 22,000 retired teachers paid 16 billion shilling pension. The government has finally paid retired teachers 16.08 billion in delayed pension after 2 decades of clamor. National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndongo said the amount is for revised claims from 22,022 teachers who retired between 1998 and 2003. I also see on devolution, governors have threatened to shut down counties over 94 billion shillings. County chiefs are set to meet today to discuss the matter and take a final decision on a possible shutdown of operations. They're demanding 94.4 billion shillings in delayed payments for the months of March, April, and May. And let's leave the front page of the Business Daily, the Daily Nation there, and get into the Business Daily. But we will be coming back to this report on the toxic sugar scam. So as for the Business Daily now, wage bill busts budget by 16 billion shillings on Ruto key hirings. And this report is by Constant Munda. The wage bill for the national government in the 3rd quarter of this financial year bust the budget by nearly 16.55 billion shillings, signaling the expenditure pressure that came with fresh appointments by President William Ruto's administration. Expenditure on salaries and wages amounted to slightly more than 152.63 billion shillings in the January-March period against a target of 136.09 billion. According to the data the National Treasury published, the over expenditure of 12.16% came at a time President Ruto was at the tail end of completing the reconstitution of his government through appointments to key positions. And when I scroll further down, I see also on the front page of the Business Daily, Kenya offers 100 dams to private investors in a 1.7 trillion shilling project. On the ticker, Treasury teeters on brink of breaching new overdraft limit. The Treasury teetered on the verge of breaching the new limit on emergency loan facility at the central bank earlier in the month amid rising cash flow pressures wired to a farm in China in 2013. Okay, let's see. Next is Co-op Bank posts 5% profit growth in Q1, and Dutch firm to offer corporate debt guarantees. Holland-based fund manager Cardano Development has announced plans to establish a corporate debt guarantee company in Kenya to help firms raise funds from the capital markets. Okay, let us now take a look at the Taifa Leo front page. But at the very top here, I see Jaindi Kisera has spent something and is quoted as stating, with the depreciation of the currency and high forex rates, foreign investors have been finding it difficult to repatriate share sales proceeds out of Kenya. Okay, Taifa Leo now. And this is the headline, Sukari Chungu. Mahasla wanunua sukari kilo moja kwa shilingi 200 na shilingi 10 kwa mara ya kwanza, na mambo bado. Bei ya panda. Wa Kenya maskini watalazimika kunywa chai bila sukari kutokana na kupanda kwa bei ya sukari nchini. Kufikia jana, kilo moja ya sukari ilikuwa ikiuzwa kwa shilingi 200 na shilingi 10, na kilo 2 400 shilingi 20 katika maduka mbalimbali Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu na Nakuru. And images there of the price tags. Wanafunzi wa vyuo vikuu vya kibinafsi kupata mkopo wa HELB. And that is further down on the Taifa Leo. I see kwa vidokezo NDC ya Jubilee kuandaliwa Jumatatu ijayo. Mkutano huo wa wajumbe utaendelea ulivyoangwa licha. Is the licha printed twice? Let me see my hard copy. Yes. Licha chama hicho kuzuiwa kutumia ukumbi wa Bomas Nairobi, David Murathe amesema. And Hartum ni vita tu, wengi wakilala njaa. An image of empty shelves there. All right, let us take a look at the front page of the Standard now. And it reads as such, mystery of dirty sugar. So we've gone we've come back round to this subject matter, and an image there of the now suspended KEBS MD, Bernard Njiraini, although there has been appointed in an acting capacity one Ms. Esther Ngari. And there is a quote of the notice of suspension, and that communication came from the Executive Office of the President, and it reads as such: the sugar consignment comprising of 20,000 bags, 50 kilograms, had been imported into the country in the year 2018 and condemned by KEBS for want of expiry date specification. KEBS condemned the consignment as unfit for human consumption. And contaminated food for the second time. Government officials and officers are being sent home over the same sugar consignment that was condemned in 2018. Two cabinet secretaries gave conflicting accounts on the impurities. You will remember the debate on mercury. And I see here on the side, kilos of contaminated sugar was released to the public. That is 1,027,000. The number of government workers suspended from 11 agencies, and 28 billion shillings. Total import of sugars, molasses and honey. And the images inset are of former, as I mentioned, the former managing directors of the Kenya Bureau of Standards, Bernard Njiraini and Charles Ongwae in set. Okay, so let's take a look at the front page of, interesting story up here actually, before I move on to the Star. Judiciary boss caught up in gold scam case. Britain has sued Chief Registrar Anna Madi, claiming she used her law firm to swindle him. They tell us there is more on page 3. Let's quickly take a look at what some of those details contained therein are. So let me flip the page. Image of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary there. It reads, and this report is by Paul Ogemba, Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Anne Amadi has been dragged into a fake gold scam case after a British man sued her for defrauding him of more than 102 million shillings. And the Metro Bradshaw claims that he paid Amadi through her law firm $742,000 US dollars, about translating to 102 million Kenya shillings for the supply of 1,500 kilograms of gold. bars, but it turned out to be hot air. He says he lost the money and never received the gold consignment. And there's a quote here. I don't want to read too much into it so that you can purchase your copy for the purposes of Paul Ogemba. She's among those who orchestrated a fraudulent scheme to obtain money by false pretense through her law firm, Amadi and Associates Advocates. They received the funds and hurriedly withdrew them in cash without adequate supporting documentation, swore Bradshaw. As a result of his complaints, Justice David Majanja issued an order freezing Amadi's accounts, those of her son Brian Ochieng Amadi and their 4 associates, who the businessman claimed had colluded to defraud him his cash. So this is before the courts of law. Amadi dragged into 102 million shilling gold suit as accounts frozen. Okay, let us take a look now at the front page of the Star. I see, first let's see what's on Siasa this weekend. Ethnic imbalance in state jobs lands Ruto in trouble. That is in the 16-page political pullout in the Star. But as for their front page, do or die, state blocks Uhuru Bomas meeting. Kenyatta allies insist Monday NDC to kick out rebels and regain party control is on. And an image here of this should be Singapore's Prime Minister feeding a giraffe. And here at State House, Nairobi, yes, Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Loong feeds a giraffe at the Nairobi Animal Orphanage, accompanied by ICT Cabinet Secretary Eliud Owalo above. Okay, I see also on the front page of the Star, reforms underway, more top KEMSA bosses likely to lose their jobs. Health CS Susan Nakumicha has promised more changes which will affect some top managers at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority. Speaking on Thursday when she inaugurated the new board, the CS said the changes will come immediately after ongoing investigations are complete. Judiciary on the spot over missing 177 million deposits. The judiciary is on the spot for taking inordinately long to recover millions of shillings in cash bail deposits siphoned by unscrupulous court officers. Auditor General Nancy Gathungu has flagged anomalies in the handling of the cash deposits. More on page 8 of the Star. And finally on the front page of the Star, medical insurance, government to pay NHIF cover for police reservists. This morning, let me welcome my panelists again and have them weigh in on a couple of these stories I did mention already in studio. We have Fred Makajos, co-convener Movement for Defense of Democracy, and we also have Nurdin Hagai, who is an advocate of the High Court. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to be with us in studio this Friday. I'll start with what, I'm seeing sugar in the headline of the Daily Nation, sugar in the headline of Taifa Leo, and sugar on the front page of the Standard as well. But let me start with your take on the increase in the cost of sugar, and that is Taifa Leo Sukari Chungu. Because the sugar, those sugar imports duty-free. Until I think up until about March, but for the first time we are told by Taifa Leo the price of a kilo of sugar has gone beyond 200 shillings, retailing at 210 shillings. What do you make of this development? And I'll start with you, Fred.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olive, and our viewers out there. The issue of sugar, there is a scandal, there is an increase in price. You've talked about 210. I was talking to some guys in the village 2 days ago. They were telling me that they are buying a kilo of sugar at around 220 and some areas 240 shillings. Yeah. Majority of Kenyans.
Which village?
Somewhere in Homa Bay County.
Okay.
Yeah. And that one tells you that majority of Kenyans are still not in a position to afford sugar. And sugar to many, it's very basic. Even if you want to take tea, be it a plain tea or a milk tea, you have to use sugar. But if you are in a position that you can't afford it, then that is a serious crisis, just like unga. You know, when the government talked about unga, they thought that it was only a matter of reducing unga, but not thinking about sugar and other basic commodities. But number two, what I've seen about sugar today, it's on the Standard newspaper and the Nation newspaper about that saga.
Yes, the contaminated.
The contaminated sugar. But, you know, you may wonder that we have serious agencies in Kenya, like the National Intelligence Service, the DCI, but you get that sugar can still be transported from one point to the other without their knowledge. To an extent, I think one of the media stations reported yesterday that they were kept in some store in Thika. You get that bit? In some store in Thika. How? At what point did the KEBSA or the KEBSA people, the KEBS, yeah, the KEBS people, allowed for the transportation of sugar from one point to the other? The people who are involved, they've mentioned that influential politicians, well, we still don't have their names, under CS. Who are they? The public should know, because this is what is going to affect the health of the public directly. You know, today, there is a time in Kenya when people talked about sugar, the mercury in sugar. That thing went to parliament. It went to other investigative agencies, but at some point, it disappeared. Is it the same thing that we are seeing today? That we have a conversation about sugar today, but tomorrow or next week, it will no longer be a conversation. Is the health of Kenyans important to these agencies? Okay. And what is their role? Are they up to the task so that they can say, enough is enough, let us only give the best thing to the market? All right. Because they are obligated to do so. And if they are not in a position to do so, they must be capable for anything that they have done.
Held culpable. Well, there were suspensions that were announced, and but let's get a little bit more detail on that story. Take a look at this report by Rosaline Obala. Flip to page 4 of the Daily Nation. Rosaline Obala and Juan Moses Nyamori, and they tell us, and this is the story here, MP's top officials said to be behind bad sugar scandal. And the first few paragraphs, Rosalina, I hope I'm not giving away too much, reads as such: the controversy surrounding the release of condemned brown sugar from government custody has sucked in senior government officials and politicians in what appears to have been a well-coordinated plan to enrich a few individuals through the bags of sugar. According to insiders, 2 politicians from central Kenya and 2 senior government officials are said to have orchestrated the release of the consignment. A confidant of President William Ruto said the head of state had ordered a thorough investigation and asked the DCI boss, Mohammed Amin, to hunt down the culprits behind the scandal. I'm curious, Nurdin, are you encouraged by the actions of President William Ruto? He sent his principal secretary for public health packing following the complaint by the Global Fund over the mosquito nets tender, the handling of that tender. We saw immediately after the next day, KEBS boss Jiraini, Bernard Jiraini, 26 others sent on suspension on account of the release of this contaminated sugar. You know, it was meant to be converted into ethanol. So are you encouraged by his actions?
Well, we need to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's actually in office, he's new in office, and he's doing his things differently. I do believe that we have a corruption problem in this country. 3/4 of our issues are corruption. And it's not just the financial angle, the moral aspect, because we are being told how these tons of kilos of sugar found themselves in the market, which means someone released them. So the moral corruption is quite present in our society. When you look at, for example, the story about the MPs and top officials, it reminds me of the mercury sugar that we saw in Parliament, where members of Parliament have been bribed with 10,000 shillings in toilets. And that story ended there. It's like we have goldfish memory in Kenya, because something blows up, we forget about it, something new trends, we are running towards it. I do believe that heads need to roll in this issue. There is, we are being told that certain officials and certain top organ people in government, we need to know who they are, because at the end of the day, I had the CS for Health matters to do with KEMSA. She said that top ranking officials in government who were trying to steal money for the sick. Now, she came short of being a referee in a football match where she blew the whistle up to halftime. Now, we need her to come back and blow until 90 minutes so we know who are these officials, so we can be able to solve these issues moving forward, because without sealing the loopholes, whatever money the government wants to collect, regardless of the finance bill that they want to have as a budget, they will always collect, but there will be loopholes where that money will be lost, sadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned mercury sugar here, so let me take a look at the standard report on the same, because they say this mercury sugar is back to haunt Kenyans. Here it is. There we go. Mercury sugar comes back to haunt Kenyans 5 years later. Let me see if I can zoom it a little farther in. There we go. And let us see. This report is by Masharia Kamau. And it tells us, let me just open up my hard copy. It tells us that questions abound as to why about 1 million kilograms of sugar earmarked for destruction had not been destroyed 5 years later. And the sugar which the KEBS had deemed unfit for human consumption in 2018 on claims it contained mercury has now been released to the market irregularly, and their fears it could cause health complications. And looking further down at this report, it is the same sugar consignment that was a subject of controversy in 2018 when it was claimed to contain mercury due to poor handling process after it was ferried in an open ship that had previously carried fertilizer, coal, and other items that may have contained harmful chemicals. And let us see if there's anything else that I haven't touched on here. I do not think so. But, oh yeah, you mentioned the Thika based firm, Fred. Reports indicated that condemned sugar consignment had been released to a Thika based firm, which in a letter to KEBS acknowledged that it had on April 20th received the same. The firm said that plans were at an advanced stage to initiate the destruction process. It is not clear whether the firm, which is an alcoholic beverage manufacturer, intended to convert the sugar into ethanol for its own use or for resale. It, however, received a demand letter from KRA on April 28th, in which the taxman demanded that it pays a tax, but went to release the consignment to went on to release the consignment to the company. Does this speak to, how is it that people are unconcerned about the health of their brother? Being a brother's keeper, Fred, is it just that culture is, corruption is now inbred or imprinted into the Kenyan DNA?
Olive, the values and morals in a society is very key and very fundamental. This is the lack of the values and morals in the society. Number one, the Kenyan taxpayers, they pay government officials, the KEBS guys, to take care of them, because the only person who can take care of an ordinary citizen is the government of the day. And at a point where the government officials are reluctant and they care less about the life of their brothers and sisters in the society, I don't think that even those people should belong to the society.
Where should they be?
They don't belong to the society, basically, because the values and the morals which they lack. And number two, you care less about your neighbor. Even the Bible says that you should love yourself, you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. But this is a situation that the person that is being paid by a taxpayer money goes to an extent and cares less about the neighbor and the people that they live with in the society. But number two, if this thing happened in 2018, yeah, and there were concerns from KEBS, at what point did they agree to release this thing to the market? And when it was being transported from one place to the other, on whose consent? We've seen 27 people have now been suspended. Many years after this thing had arrived in Kenya, and they were concerned, which were raised by the KEBS itself as an agency. But today, we are getting another story that this thing is in the market. Well, you know, when I mentioned the thicker store, I saw in a news, in one of our media houses yesterday, they were saying it was transported from one point, then to thicker, then after, in thicker store, there were some KRA officials which raided that store sometimes back. What did they go to do there? Did they, was the intention only to go and collect taxes? Or at a point when they were there, were they aware that these, the sugar, these many bags of sugar was still in that store? What concerns did they raise? Yeah, so I think this is a matter which should be interrogated, because it had happened in Kenya before. It went to Parliament and other agencies. In fact, I don't think whether that report is in the public domain. We don't know where it is stored. This one will also end. You know, in Kenya, things come and they go. Tomorrow, when there is another thing which will be viral, be it a video or what, that will be the next conversation, and we'll be forgetting about this very important thing. Okay. So I think the government must come out, and they have to hold these people capable, and they have to ensure that any person who was involved in this process, at least something has to be done. All right. And we have to get dispense of this one.
Okay, so we need to take a break, but I will come back and pose the same question to you, Nurdin. Is it that we are all capable of this type of action? It's only that we have not gotten the opportunity to line our pockets at the expense of fellow Kenyans. We take a break, we'll be back with more.
Mimi nilikuwa tu pale reserve, nime-maintain, kuna fresh air, nini, na bros between peace. Alafu, imagine shemeji yangu, akakuja ametoka Nairobi, ati yeye ndio ameomoka. Akaniambia, ati Nairobi iko vitu soft, vitu mzuri. For example, tukifika Nairobi, atanipeleka place inaitwa Village Market, tukakulia huko. Si tukapanga safari, sisi ndio hao, tumewasili wapi? Nairobi. Guess what? Huyu mtu badala ya kunipeleka Village Market, akanirutisha Village, akanipeleka Market.
To get Market Village, dial *812*799#. Skiza na Nation.
Wagwan, my people! Another Friday is coming up and we are ready for you.
Piga ya mwisho. Ndio kana break voice.
Sitting down with one of the biggest comedians in the country, Jugush will be stopping by with Sele. We have new talent on the block. If you think you can beatbox like him, let's make a date on Friday. Hosted by me, Amina Abdiraba, Osoro on the social, DJ E on the decks, all going down Friday, 10 p.m. only on NTV.
The Trend in association with Spotify.
Babe, have you heard Don Tolling by Uncle Jing Jong?
But have you heard
Have you heard?
Have you heard? Spotify has over 100 million songs.
God is always engaged in our affairs. He's engaged in your life. He's engaged in the life of our community. He's engaged in the life of our church. He's engaged in the life of our nation.
Nimezama katika kina kirefu cha bahari ya mapenzi.
Nasemaje, tumerudi jamani, and this Saturday it's going to be hot like a heater on the biggest entertainment show on the land, Teams Republic. That's why tunakuletea DJ RB kutoka Tanzania. And all the way from Nigeria, the biggest producer, Young Willis mwenyewe. Willis, get them.
And in studio, guys, we are bringing you the legendary Iduza. Not forgetting Lash mwenyewe atakuwa in the building. Na kama kawaida, music policy with the courtesy of DJ Rickmo, the Afro King.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. Nurdin, I had asked you a question right before we went on break. Is this just who we are? And should we now just accept ourselves? Are we a lost cause?
Well, you see, the drafters of the Constitution believed when they put Chapter 6 there, that is leadership and integrity. Maybe that chapter was meant to bring about leadership and integrity. But you see, leaders are the mirrors of the society. There's no way you'll elect a thief and expect them to go there and take care of whatever is there. Because the moment you allow them to bribe your vote, you are part and parcel of that. You get? And as you rightfully said, yes, it is true, there's lack of opportunities. Once they get opportunities, we would see the same thing. The sad reality is that what I've come to realize that every single government, or rather I've accepted, every single government will have a scandal. Now, the magnitude of each scandal in each government is what differs. We're already a couple of scandals into this new administration. I wonder by the time we're in 5 years, what we'll have seen. Because I see in each coming government, the magnitude keeps going up. So we are going to be shocked. The matter of the mercury and sugar, I really don't think, if members of parliament, some of them are actually part and parcel of that syndicate, obviously the report won't see the light of day. Because as you pray for the rain, expect the mud. They are the mud, so they will most definitely take care of themselves, like what happened the other time when they were being bribed with 10,000 shillings. So we are in for a rude shock, and I believe the day the voter actually realizes that whatever you elect will take care of your assets, or rather impoverish you, then we will see a better day. But as for now, we wait for a new scandal.
Really?
It is true.
That's a new one. I've had it for the first time today. When you pray for the rain,
expect the mud.
Expect the mud.
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing I want to wrap up the newspaper review so we can get into, there's a hole in my bucket, right? Mm-hmm. You know, how sure are we, if we pay more taxes, that we won't be reading about similar cases such as that of what happened in Kemsa, where donor funds were misappropriated. But let's take a look at Jubilee wrangles to begin with. Taifa Leo tells us that NDC ya Jubilee kuandaliwa Jumatatu ijayo. And they quote David Murathe as stating this: mkutano huo wa wajumbe utaendelea ulivyopangwa licha chama hicho kuzuiwa kutumia ukumbi wa Bomas Nairobi. David Murathe asema. Is it suspicious to you, the timing of these renovations at the Bomas of Kenya, Fred? Do you see the state hand pulling the strings behind the scene, or, you know, is it just bad timing for the President Uhuru Kenyatta faction, former President Uhuru Kenyatta faction?
Olive, this has been a game of the government from time immemorial. You know, sometimes they will tell you about renovations. Sometimes there are activities going on in Bomas. So you may not understand. But that is their game, be it as it may. You know, Jubilee Party, and their party leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, and that is the vice chair speaking, David Muradi, saying that the NDC shall continue. I think they have several options. It's not only Bomas of Kenya. There are several options. We have stadiums. We have the private halls where the NDC, you know, the NDC is for the delegates only, restricted for delegates. It's not a rally. That is where the delegates are going to talk about key issues in their political party. And I think they ought to have been given a chance in the Bomas of Kenya, basically because they had requested. And I think they got the response yesterday. The response to the executive director, Polycarp Hinga, and I think to the Secretary General, Mheshimiwa Jeremiah Kioni. They ought to have been given that chance so that they could go there, deliberate on the issues which are affecting Jubilee as a party. They can see on how to do harmonization, and we advance our democracy. In fact, if we could have been in a mature democracy, those people in Jubilee and the officials could have been given an opportunity. In fact, if they could have even asked for another place to have 2 NDCs or 3 NDCs at a go, they would have been given. Basically because Kenya is still a developing democracy. And in a developing democracy, we should be in a position of giving each and every political party a chance to exercise their rights. And you know, the regime of the day, they said during their campaigns and even before that they will protect all the political parties, and number 2, you would wish to have a strong opposition. You know, Jubilee, if you go to register and what the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, the agreement which they deposited with the register of political parties, Jubilee as a political party is still in Azimio la Umoja One Kenya as per that agreement. But today, if you see things which are happening in Jubilee Party, and I think the support that the other faction is getting from the government of the day is quite alarming. And I think that one should inform all Kenyans that the government of the day is not in a position to advance our democracy, and they are not in a position to protect our democracy that we fought for a long time, and our forefathers fought for, and we are still fighting for. In any participatory system of governance, and in any participatory system of democracy, like the one that we are trying to create in Kenya, you have to give all political parties their rights and their choices that they make as political parties. But you cannot come as a government of the day, then you start cajoling other people, you start creating factions. That today, the Jubilee Party has 28 members, and you get a deputy president saying that the Jubilee Party, out of 28, we have 26. 26 from where? They were elected in Jubilee Party, and the Jubilee Party is in Azimio, and it has been in Azimio. That is the agreement which was deposited with the register of political parties. But today, if you say that you want a strong opposition, you want to weaken that opposition at the same time. You know, that is doublespeak. Okay. And we know the masters of doublespeak in this country. Yeah.
So, I mean, Nuruddin, you know, we are told former President Uhuru Kenyatta releases a notice. It's published in the papers. There is a National Delegates Convention scheduled for, I believe, the 22nd, which is, if Saturday is the 20th, 21st, so that's Monday.
Yes.
Then Kanini Kega and his side install Sabina Shege as a party leader, and the go-ahead say there's no such NDC scheduled. Then we are told, oh, the Bomas of Kenya, which former President Uhuru Kenyatta said would be the venue for said NDC, is informed that it's unavailable. It is undergoing renovations. What do you make of all of this?
This is some serious sibling rivalry, where we have Jubilee A, that is the current Jubilee, then Jubilee B, that is the new government, who are children of that party. And some political issues are being sorted, or scores are being settled, because some feel they formed a party, they helped form a party, and they feel like they were edged out. So they feel like we are now in a position of influence, and we can influence. So how do they influence? Instigate a coup within. Get yourself a team, a new faction against another faction. Now we have Kioni does something. Kanini Kega tells him, hold my beer, and he does something different. Kioni goes all the way and removes them as members. They decide to remove the former president as the party leader. But all this happens without realizing that the Political Parties Tribunal gave a direction in that whatever issues they have should be first settled internally. And that is when this NDC issue came up, because after that order from the Political Parties Tribunal, the former president then came up with this date for the NDC. Now we're being told Bomas is busy. Oh, it's not the first time. During the campaigns, the current president was meant to have a rally in Fungo Stadium. He ended up having the rally on the road. The former president, the current president was actually meant to have another rally in a stadium, but the stadium apparently had interdomination prayers. We don't know if they took place. So it is more or less the same tactics in every new government. And that's why I'm saddened, because I thought things would change, but I think they use the same cards every other time. And that's why I keep saying how you do anything is how you do everything. So if their issues will be settling political scores, then we'll be in for a very rough ride. This reminds me of Obama and Trump. Trump's administration was always trying to erode Obama's history, and he had something personal with Obama. That ended up bringing back Obama to the political scene, which helped Biden become a president. Now, I'm not saying this will help the former president come back to the scene and help anybody else become a president. All I'm saying is that whatever issues they have, you have to realize that, one, political scores have to be settled. Number two, there is the political parties fund in Jubilee that is enormous. That is also a tussle, because there are those who feel we need to take over this party to control those funds. Because we are told that there is money that has never been spent in Jubilee. We also hear of stories that some money has been misappropriated and some would like to do an audit. So it's an entire circus, but I've heard Kioni say that even if Bomas doesn't go on, they have two more options and a private option. So I am pretty sure if the former president really wants an NDC, it will happen. He'll get a place to have this NDC. But the sad reality is that we are being preoccupied with political shenanigans that really don't help the people. People are suffering. If on my way here today, I saw so many people going about their business, enterprising Kenyans. The only problem is that leaders don't care about them. If they cared about half of their problems, not because I'm sure they can't care about all their problems, just half, then would be far as a country. The sad reality is that we have leaders who are there, they only care, it's more or less self-centered. So how do I make a deal here and there? How do I settle political scores? At the end of the day, he didn't support you. That's fine. You're the president. Move on. Let's work at the end of the day, because we'll keep having these wrangles until when? If, for example, let's say they take over the Jubilee, for example. Yes, you've won the tussle, and then is the price of sugar down? Is the price of hunger down? Is the price of basic commodities down? It's not. You've won that tussle. Then it doesn't make sense. So we need to choose our battles wisely, and the government needs to realize that those who advise it rather need to understand that they made a lot of promises, and the time is ticking. And I believe that the Kenyans of today are well informed as opposed to those of the back days. So you will be judged simply by picking your manifesto and people ticking tick or X. And that is your scorecard for the next 5 years. So I believe we need to shape up and plan on how to improve the lives of the people, as opposed to setting political scores that really don't matter at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let us transition now into the topic of conversation. And this is what we're discussing this morning. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza. Faithless in little, will they be faithful with much? There's something Rudin said here. He said every government has a scandal, or you can expect a scandal if there hasn't been good stewardship of the taxes already raised by Kenyans. Can we expect good stewardship with more taxes coming out of their pockets? I always thought, I was under the impression that Kenya Kwanza guys keep time, but Joe Halende is missing, and so is Askan, Camille Askan, he's habitually late usually for this show, so I'm sure his rushing is just around the corner. Joe Halende hasn't picked my call, so I have no clue, but we will proceed with Nurdin Hagai and Fred Makajos on the subject. If you're wondering what this is about, Gen Z, well, it's based on this song by Harry Belafonte.
There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, a hole.
Well, fix it, dear Henry. dear Henry, well fix it, dear Henry, fix it.
With what shall I fix it, dear Liza, with what shall I fix it?
Tells Harry, fix it. So clearly we have a revenue leakage problem. Do we need to fix it in your view before we go about raising more taxes, Fred?
Thank you very much, Olive. You know, here comes a case that in Kenya we usually collect taxes, but at the end of it, it will not benefit a common mwananchi. And it's a very absurd situation. You know, today, what we have before the parliament is the finance bill 2023. And there are a raft of issues which are there. Some of them are new proposals. Some of them have been there before. And we talk on the priorities. You know, the government is being funded by the taxes, majorly, apart from borrowings and other things. The KRA, they collect the taxes, they submit, and it's being divided. But now, the problem comes in when there is the national government and the county government and the priorities. You know, like today, what is being talked about so much is about the 3% housing levy. You remember this conversation, we had it in Kenya, I think it was in 2008 during Kibaki's government. And you know, Kibaki came up with a blueprint of the Vision 2030. And the Housing Development Fund was part and parcel of that vision. And he wanted Kenyans to get affordable housing. By that time, when he was talking about it, Kibaki had improved the economy. There was circulation of money in the economy, and at least Kenyans could not complain too much as it now. But what about at a point that you want to overtax people, and at a point when you want to overtax them, there is already a burden. This is a point where we say, punda imechoka. In that, you overtax. There are several priorities that we, the people of Kenya, should be putting forward rather than the housing issue. You know, today, I think for the first time, we have a new CS of education, and he gave us a report that it was around 400 pupils who never reported, and they were not admitted to, was it high school? Yeah, to high school. Why? Because majority of the parents are not in a position to afford the school fee. Even as late as yesterday, there are some students who have never reported to high school because the economy is tight, and at that point, the government has misplaced priorities, like the 3% levy. I think this one should come out of one's own volition, that you decide on what you want to do with the salary that you get from the government. But the government at the same point should not compel you that you have to go their direction. And remember, number two, the head of the government of the day has insisted, saying every day that this is not a tax. Yeah? This is not a tax how? And at the same point, you are compelling Kenyans to do. And even we had the Prime Minister for Singapore visiting Kenya, and the head of state, while he was addressing, he made a statement that the government then of Singapore made a bold step of prioritizing the issues of housing development fund. You remember, by that time, that was the major priority of Ling Yunkwa, the then Prime Minister of Singapore. It was a major priority. And you know, houses were being built within 3 months. People have occupied those houses. Today, you know, you are not even being told they are going to take how long. Number two, what about if you are a government worker and you resign today? What about if you are a government worker, then you die the following day? Well, the government has not given a clear modality on how this thing is going to be done. And even them as the implementers, They don't want to come out and tell us this is how this one is going to be done, this is how this one is going to be done. Then number two, it is like they are thumb chesting, because they want to compel Kenyans that you will have to. This is our priority. And that is not a priority of Kenyans, I think. That is why we are a sovereign state, and people also have a power to say that this is good for us and this is wrong for us. That is why our captain Raila Odinga said that we are going to mobilize our MPs to reject that bill in totality in the floor of the National Assembly. And in fact, we are telling even other people in the Kenya Kwanza side, they should send their MPs messages to inform them that those are not their priorities as it now. The priority of Kenyans as it now is how to put the food on the table. The priority of Kenyans as at now is how to take their children to school so that we can advance in a society. So I think we have a misplaced priority in this proposal of the finance bill of 2023. And number two, the government has decided not to be sensitive to the plight of the people.
As Julian's repeatedly likes to remind us, we have the opportunity to submit memoranda on the finance bill. The deadline is tomorrow. But Nudin, which a sense of urgency has been created by the debt situation we find ourselves in, or so we've been told. So we need to raise cash, and we need to raise cash urgently to avoid a default. But are you convinced that, because I would say which should take precedence, sealing revenue leakage or raising more taxes? But in a situation where we are told we need the money and we need the money now, do you feel that in tandem there should have been commitment on how the steps that are being taken to safeguard these resources, or are the actions taken by the executive office of the president in the last week, are they sending the right signal?
A hypothetical situation. You have a hole in your pocket, and you keep taking all your money in that pocket, and it keeps falling off, and you keep working every day to get the same money. You're not doing anything. We have to seal the loopholes first, because I believe no matter how much you tax Kenyans, if the loopholes are there, money is being stolen, then you're doing zero, or as some will say, zilch at the end of the day. So I find the situation where, as you rightfully say, the finance bill is a little bit punitive. I am looking forward to see what the members of parliament will do once they come back from recess, but knowing them, I won't be too surprised, because that is a house that is captured. You know, in the last election, they say they were captured by the executive. They tried to run away during the campaign when they were telling us we will have our own mind, but it seems they have been recaptured. So it's a capture method, and they are back to ground zero. So we find ourselves in a situation where, like you rightfully said, there are government projects that government projects are a catalyst of continuity. We have the Vision 2030.
Yeah.
The sad reality is that what was planned under Kibaki's government, the administration that came after it inflated whatever projects were there. That now opens up room for corruption. Look at things like SGR. You overprice it, it will never bring the value it was meant to bring. Now we have projects that now, like for example, the housing, he says. There are loopholes in that, because if you listen to every single high-ranking official in UDA has a different take on housing. Once it's a tax, it's a mortgage, it's a tax mortgage, then it's a tax, then it's a bill, and they don't even understand what it is. At the end of the day, yesterday I heard the PS for housing say that it will take you 30 years to finish paying. If at all you will take up, and once you take up, you'll be paying 5,000 shillings. So my question is, let's say I'm 45 years or 50 years, and I pass on before the 30 years end. Is there a room for assignment? Can that be assigned to, let's say, a sibling or a child I've left behind? Those are loopholes they need to seal. Another question is, it is meant to compel every single person that is being paid to pay 3%. What if I have a house and I don't need your house? What if I have a beautiful house that I don't need your house? Public participation. We go back to that. You see, those who deal with policy framework in this government, they need to learn something called research. You need to research. Yes, we do realize that shelter is a basic need, but at the end of the day, what is most important right now? You keep telling me you want to throw me into a concrete place that one, I don't know where it will be, that is number one, but you will be taking my money. Then you tell me that I have 7 years, I can decide to go and take back my money. My question is, which office am I taking money from? That is a question. You see, the problem is communication in how they run the affairs of the government. They need to work on the communication. That is why it brings about, you know, that's why they get a lot of propaganda against any project they run. Because anyone can spin whatever you want to do. Because there is no public participation. The public participation that is done is more or less like a formality. They just come, do this, and it's that. So that when you go to court, people like us go to court, they come as they put as an exchange of in the affidavit, they say, hey, by the way, we call for public participation. If nobody came, it is not our business. But at the end of the day, you need to realize that research is important. What do people need right now? What's the most important thing? So I believe their mode of communication needs to change, and they need to have one line of communication, because we can't have 4 people say different things. So who am I to believe? It's the same thing as a hustler fund. The head of economic recovery says that is being managed by the private sector. Then you have a CSA, it is not the private sector. So who am I to believe? And that is what has been happening since they took over office. You look at one ministry that promises us jobs, and then he gets countered. That is not the case. So who am I to believe? We find ourselves in, like I said, a scandal away. And if this housing issue is handled properly, we'll be back here and we'll be laughing about how it's a scandal. And I hope it's not the case, because I do believe that we do need housing in this country. But the way to go about it should be transparent, it should be open, and let's not have a pyramid scheme kind of a situation moving forward.
I'm just pulling up Korir Singoe's tweet in response to one Moses Kuria, because like you said, one person says this, the other comes back and says that is his personal view. That is what the president said, actually, with regard when he was pressed about his deputy's statements on, quote, shareholding. And actually on the subject, because it was also on, which paper was it? It was where, let me see, yes, it was on the front page of the Standard at the very top of the, here we go. It reads, Gachagua, key state jobs are for Kenya Kwanza loyalists. Deputy President reiterates people from regions that did not vote for them will not get employed. The gentleman has doubled down. Let us see the Star. It actually informs their Siasa pullout, and that is ethnic imbalance in state jobs lands Ruto in trouble. Fred, what do you make of the Deputy President's insistence? You know, because already, you know, the first time he said it, it caused hairs on the back of many necks to stand. But he keeps hammering in the message. Why do you think that is?
Thank you once more. You know, these are the type of people who should not be given any chance in a public service. Because, you know, if you want to check the tenets of democracy and the principles of governance, one of them is equity. Equity is one of the principles of governance. And if there is no fair sharing of services in the government of the day, you will get a section rebelling. And that one even can cause to a very serious thing in a nation like Kenya. It can even lead to secession, because people will say, we didn't vote, the section which didn't vote for these guys, they will come out and say, no, we didn't vote for William Ruto. So we are not shareholders in that government. We also have to form our own government where we will feel fully represented, and we'll be getting our shares. Our shares will be distributed to us equally. But now you get, this one is the second in command in a country, making such reckless statements. And not once, not twice. This is something that he has been saying consistently, not knowing that there are majority of Kenyans who, not only in Kenya, but even in the global world, they have focus in Kenya. But they will be saying that if that is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya making such statements, is it even a good place to come and invest in? Leave alone the people of Kenya themselves. But now, we who didn't vote for the Kenya Kwanza government, we may decide also to form our own government, raise our own taxes and decide on what to do with our own taxes. Basically because if they are making such reckless statements every day that you are not a shareholder in such and such a government, and he's very proud and he's laughing, saying that that is normal and that is what we told you even during campaigns. Well, campaigns are now over. What is he doing, him as a person, to help his boss to bring the country together? You know that institution of presidency is not only William Ruto, it is both of them. And one of the things that the presidency should do after every elections is uniting all Kenyans and coming together so that Kenyans can speak with one voice. But at a particular moment that you get such statements coming from such a government official, then I think a section of Kenyans would also say that we don't belong to that government, and I think we should also form our own government and swear in our own president and collect our own taxes so that we can govern ourselves. Because such statements are not good for a country like Kenya. Okay. We've progressed. I think almost 60 years after independence. Yeah? And we still get a deputy president like Rigathi Gachagua. I think it is a disgrace to our society. And I think when we will be given an opportunity again to go for an election, we should not elect such individuals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before Kenya Kwanza supporters come for my neck, the persons who would have been giving the alternate view have not turned up. Perhaps wameitwa mkutano State House. But Nurdin, tell me, why do you think, despite these, because it might be the reality, but to publicly repeatedly state them, despite Kenyans, it being unpopular among certain with some Kenyans. Why is it an extension of what is happening with Jubilee? Is it a scramble for the kingpinship of Mount Kenya?
First and foremost, you're right when you say there's a struggle for the kingmanship and someone wants to look like or to endear themselves to the people so that he or she can become a king. I don't know king for what. We don't have kingdoms in Kenya. That is a wrong mentality we have as a country. Anyway, I believe two things. One, he doesn't understand his roles under the Constitution. That is Article 147 of the Constitution. So he needs to fire his legal advisor, like today morning. Secondly, when he was reading his oath of affirmation of office, clearly he wasn't internalizing what he was saying, because let me read out to you. He says, I do swear that I will always truly and diligently serve the people and the Republic of Kenya in the office of the DP of the Republic of Kenya. It goes down there. Let me just skip and say that I will do justice to all without fear, favor, affection, or ill will. Now, when you come today and tell us that those who did not vote for this government are not shareholders and they will not get appointments, but at the same time you want to tax them to death. So what are you telling them? And then you have to remember there are those who voted for the president, there are those who voted for former prime minister, and there are those who didn't vote, who are majority. So what happens to those who didn't vote? So they can't get appointments as well. You see, it is very unfortunate to hear certain utterances, because people need to understand the value of whatever they say. And that is what, like you rightfully said, some who are high-ranking officials forget that right now you're a CS. Whatever you tweet is viewed globally. Now, if you tweet reckless statements, that is an egg on the face of the government. So it has to do some PR exercises to try and clean up your mess. And that is what we saw with the Canada issue yesterday and the day before. So you look at certain utterances from the deputy president, and we feel like we're in a campaign mode. I have a friend of mine who jetted in, and he was asking me the other day, when are you guys voting? So I asked him, why are you telling me that? He's like, because I see the opposition is very active, the government is very active, and people are combating one another. I thought you guys, you were done with the elections. Ama, you have elections after every 1 year. I told him, no, this is a sad reality. People vote to get seats to actually start campaigning. So we're actually campaigning for 2027, the sad reality. So when will people work? When will that so-called plan be implemented? Some will say you can chew gum and walk, but let's be honest. 3/4 of the time is meant to bastardize the other side, and the other side is meant to counter. So when are you going to work? What you have to realize is that those who are not in office would like this exchange because they have nothing to lose. All they do is they'll distract you. As they say, the former president was distracted. I don't know how, in quotes. They'll distract you. Then 5 years from now, or rather 4, they pick your manifesto when they have a candidate for presidency. And now they say, let us ask you Kenyans, ABCD, was it done? No, that's hot air, tick. You keep moving, and you are the ones who will suffer the consequences, because you won't achieve whatever you're looking for. At the end of the day, I believe his utterances, because coming from the president, I think he wants us to discard them, but it's going to be hard because he's a deputy president and he has functions under the constitution. He's like more or less like the principal assistant. And Article 134 says, in case of incapacity, he takes over. Is this what would take over? How would you be a symbol of national unity? And that's what you need to understand, like you rightfully said. People think when you talk about presidency, it's William Ruto. It's William Ruto plus Rigathi Gachagua. They come together. That's why when you vote, they're together on that ballot paper. So I believe he needs to realize that, yes, certain things, like he says, happen to him, but it's time to move on. It's time to heal, find God, heal, and work. Because at the end of the day, if you keep mourning every other day, so what am I supposed to do as a Kenyan? You are in office, you're meant to work, but you are ranting the same way I'm ranting. So who is going to work at the end of the day? So I believe, like he rightfully says, put your priorities in check so that we actually move. And I repeat, those who advise this government, if at all they take advice, those who advise it wisely. Because at the end of the day, the more they keep making these blunders, the more people start saying, Ama, we made a wrong choice. The more you lose a vote. And I'll repeat this today. The mentality that, yes, some would still think that we have a mentality where our politics is ethnic based, and that is why he's trying to be the kingpin of Mount Kenya. People might be shocked in 4 years' time. People realize that we want issues as opposed to you coming to tell us you're a king. A king to who? It's not a kingdom. So at the end of the day, those in government need to realize that they need to shape up, style up, and start working. The less you talk, the better. Because there's this craze, I think it comes with some of them who have never held these offices. Because there's this razzmatazz, there's the largesse, there's the security, detail, there's everything. And there's this obsession of being in the media 24/7. What they don't realize, sorry to the media, what they don't realize is that, one, you love them because whatever they say you record. Years from now, you'll be playing this and that. And the question will be, why the double speak? So if I were them, I'd reduce more of talking and work more.
Actually, that was the front page headline on the Sunday Nation, just before that State House sit down with the president. We need to take a break, but when we come back, how this feeds into our topic is, when people come into government, is it with the mentality of it's our time to eat? And therefore, we need to raise more taxes. And what do you make, Fred, of what the president said, that in spite of what his deputy may have said, he gave Francis Ogola, Chief of Defense Forces. Come back with more on the other side of this break.
The courts found Jesus to be innocent. But an interesting twist, the two thieves he was arrested with remained inside.
Kuna watu wawili walitoka Kondele huko Kisumu ndio wakaniambia, Yesu, sisi ni wezi, tumeshikwa kwa maana.
Ati mtu akikudunga na kisu hivi ungoe, ufai kungoa, unafaa kui.
Usingoe, unaachilia tu, inakaa hapa, unakuja tunangoa kwa hospitali. Just put some kitambaa around.
It's for your own health or for evidence?
Not for evidence. It is actually to prevent bleeding.
Get ready to tantalize your taste buds and embark on a culinary journey with Pishi Bomba, the ultimate cooking show that brings the flavors of the world right into your living room. Tune in this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with me, Claire Karatu, for a mouth-watering adventure.
Pishi Bomba, in association with Coca-Cola.
Make your mealtime more magical. Buy any participating pack. Check under the cap to get your code and stand a chance to win free food shopping for a year, plus millions in instant cash, airtime and shopping vouchers.
Pata taarifa teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke.
This week on Crossover, we talk about the peace that comes with being faithful to God's will.
And what better guest to have in studio than the lovely minister of God, Amani Gospel.
Na pia tutakuwa na dancers bomba sana and music from yours truly, Son of Nations.
So save the date and join us this Sunday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV. So tell a friend.
To tell a friend.
To cross over.
Safaricom congratulates Ferdinand Omanyala on his fantastic win at the Absa Kipkeino Classic.
Tunukiwa na Safaricom. Chagua bei yako ya kupigia simu au data. Piga *444# au utembelee My Safaricom app upate deal poa ya kupigia simu, uongee zaidi au ubrowse zaidi.
Good morning. Thank you for staying with us on AM Live. And with me in studio, we have Fred Makajos, co-convener, Movement for Defense of Democracy, as well as Rudin Hagai, advocate of the High Court. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, faithless and little, faithful with much. Governments, we've been told by Rudin, in Kenya at least, have been dogged by scandal. So we'll... Raising more taxes, will our taxes go down the drain is essentially the question we're asking. And we're having a conversation about, is it because when people come into government, they come in with the mentality of it's our time to eat? And on the same, before we took the break, Fred, I had asked, what do you say of the president saying, in spite of what my, in spite of what, Ascon Kamili is here, in spite of what my deputy president may have said, I went ahead and appointed Francis Ogola, Chief of the Defense Forces, because Nyanza has never held such a position before.
Thank you. Major Francis Ogola, the new KDF, was appointed by the virtue of his position and not that it was a reward to the people of Nyanza. If you go to the disciplined forces, they also have their own criteria and their own regulations which guides them. Even this time around, we knew that if it was not Francis Ogola, then it could have been General Badi. But now you can't come out and say that this one is a reward to the people of Nyanza and you are now part and parcel of the government. Francis Ogola is a government official and is a general who has served this nation with a lot of decorum and honor, and that is how he has been promoted to that level. In fact, if you check those regulations in that sector, you will find out that General Ogola deserved that thing, and there was no any other option. If it was not Ogola, then it was Badi. And now you can't say that is a reward to a specific community. What about his term? Their terms usually end within 4 years. Then another general will take over. that will not be a reward to any community in this country. And I think in any promotion which is being made in a government institution, they are not being made as rewards. They are being made out of merit and what you can do as a person. So I find, you know, the deputy president is ever making such reckless statements, but the president had no option but just to defend his deputy because of what I told you about the presidency as an institution. Yeah, however, that was by right.
When you started your submissions, I think your tongue slipped a little bit. You said major, it is general.
General.
Yes, in fact, I was very afraid that Leila Muhammad will text me before you conclude your remarks. But Aspen Community, good morning. Glad you could make it in
there's a lot of traffic on Bong Road, but we thank God.
No, we're just happy you're here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So, topic of conversation today is there's a hole in my bucket. Dear Liza, faithless in little, faithful with much? That is the question. For many Kenyans, they're like already the revenue that is collected is lost. The president's senior economic advisor admitted as much a significant portion. So will raising more taxes be akin to filling a leaky bucket with water? What's your take?
Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it, considering that Kenya has the system of governance that we have has a history of a lot of wastage in how they run the affairs of the government. There's been cases of graft and corruption here and there. We have seen people presented before court. Others, their cases are being withdrawn in a manner that we don't really understand. So I understand where the caution comes from. We could be collecting more taxes, which is not bad. Everybody is supposed to collect taxes. The government can only run on taxes. But the taxes must be utilized accordingly to change the lives of the people. When you go to the village and taxes are collected, you can see your roads are tarmacked or are well maintained. I think you wouldn't have an issue with that. But when you are taxed more and more, and that does not change your life, then you feel there's need for caution. You don't want to work so hard, and you don't see what that hard work pays afterwards. So I understand where the caution comes from, and Kenyans by right deserve to question if really the government is going to utilize what they're collecting prudently. You'll realize that right now the president William Ruto is trying so hard to convince the public and even those who are in the civil service to contribute to the 3% levy. And the basis upon which everybody is complaining is, one, they're not sure about how this money is going to be used, who's going to be the custodian, how sure are they that this money is going to be well taken care of, and if it's going to be used to implement what the president is proposing. So I understand where the question is coming from, and genuinely so the responsibility goes back to the presidency and those who are in government to convince the people, to let them understand that actually this is a whole new government. We have better ways of cushioning you from the shock of this unending pilferage of funds from whatever sources. We are seeing KEMSA right now. We are talking about KEBS. We are talking about the registrar the court, Mr. Madi, and such cases are really causing a lot of tension and a lot of suspicion in the minds of Kenyans. What is more important for me right now is how the government is going to convince the people that whatever taxes they collect, whatever money they collect from them, shall be used accordingly and to change their lives. When I was just coming in, I had you ask a question to my brother Fred. I probably don't know, Fred was my very serious and senior comrade at the other side. So on General Ogola, the president had all the choices before him, and he had the opportunity to elect to pick anybody that he wishes. And he thought to himself and said...
Is that accurate, Ascon, though?
It is.
That he had the option to pick anybody. He chooses not really.
He actually did.
He had limited.
No, he had limited, but he had options beyond Ogola. That is the point I'm trying to make. If he decided to retire Ogola in a different fashion, he would have done it. If he decided to do anything else to ensure that somebody else comes into that place and not Ogola, he would have done it. But Ogola, also considering his history with the president and the fact that he had been mentioned in very very funny revelations, it wouldn't have been very possible that the president would have considered him. But the president has shown that is somebody who can really, look at things differently. So for me, I thought that was very nice, and I actually commented the very first day that that happened. We had General Opande before, who was a Luo and was very close to becoming the Chief of Defense. And funny things happened. He was assigned different responsibilities, and that is how it ended. We have had very senior Luos in that position before, who were almost there, but they have always been, in a very funny way, taken away from that opportunity. So this was the very first time that the president consciously took a decision to put a Luo in that position, and we must appreciate him for that.
All right. Just to allow Ascon to catch up, but can we trust, and is that part of the problem, can we trust what the government tells us about the utilization of these extraneous taxes, Because we had, and I had mentioned this before you came in, and it's something that was raised by Nudin here, and that is masters of doublespeak. Past public statements on key issues expose shift, plans to increase taxes on fuel, the housing fund, and other proposals in finance bill lay bare dramatic U-turns as top leaders change positions they previously held on similar issues. William Ruto told us as of June, did you say June 1st? We'll be paying less for our LPG canisters. There's a clip that has been circulating about him talking about the VAT on fuel. He came in, it's going up. And the most recent example of a government, and when he's questioned about his deputy president, we were talking about the Francis Ogola situation. He says those are his personal views. And then the most recent example of personal views, Korir Sing'oei responding to a Moses Kuria tweet saying the personal views expressed by Moses Kuria do not represent government policy on this complex and challenging issue. But the question is this: can we trust them to keep their word?
Let me begin by saying I actually don't think the views by Moses Kuria were personal as the PS tried to portray. Because when the president went to South Africa, he made almost similar, comments on this matter. You remember him saying that we have to call out the generals in Sudan and tell them, the equipments of war that were bought by taxpayers' money in Sudan are not meant to kill the taxpayers, are not meant to kill women and children, are not meant to bomb roads and hospitals. So what Moses Kuria said is almost close to what the president said in South Africa, and I think that is the position, however casual, that Kenya takes on this matter, that South Sudan, the Sudan generals need to be called out and to be told the war has to stop. Keeping them in that fashion of the generals can just wake up and decide what to do with the nation is what I think the president is trying to address there, and maybe Moses Kuria in very unfriendly choice of words. So second to that, I think it is becoming clearer the difference between campaigns and governance. What politicians would say in a campaign and what happens in reality. Considering now that when William Ruto was campaigning, he didn't understand, or maybe he didn't see the need to address the question of debts then. Now we are in a situation where debts are on our neck and something has to be done.
But he was the deputy president. Are you saying he was completely out of touch?
I wouldn't want to say that, because he made comments to that effect. He has actually stated very categorically in the past that during the second time he was very far from the operations of government. And actually we could see he was far from the operations of the government. But either way, what I'm trying to say is that the campaigns could be a little different from what happens in reality. In the campaigns, then we didn't picture that our debts would be, materializing on or maturing on the very first 1 year of governance of William Ruto. Maybe he didn't consider that. Now that the shock is on him, that really we have to be paying our debts and they're coming large and quick. I mean, he has to design a way of doing it. So he has said that either he's going to continue with taxing Kenyans to keep the debts within range, or he goes ahead to keep piling more debts on Kenyans. So this is a very difficult decision to make. But so far, I think I would want us to give him some chance and see what happens with the next 3 months or 1 year before this first budget comes to a close.
All right. Fred, chief economic advisor to the president, said what they're doing is they want quick wins. They want to propel the economy, and focusing on curbing this government wastage that he says, you know, is characteristic of all governments. You know, this is not the right time. Is that sending the right message to you? Although the president has countered that narrative with his most recent actions, has he not?
Thank you, Olive. You know, first and foremost, karibu sana, welcome, Comrade Kamili.
Thank you.
You know, Kamili has referred to me as a comrade, a serious comrade.
You sent me photographic evidence.
They are there. But Comrade Kamili.
Thank you.
But now Kamili is saying that the president now, who was a deputy president then, didn't know about the debt that
the extent of the debt, perhaps.
Of course, the state. And now, this is a presidential candidate campaigning, even before you become a president. You know, if you are campaigning, you have a platform of campaign, you have your manifesto, you have your plan. And that one maybe tells you that maybe the regime of the day was not prepared, that they were going to form the government. Yeah? Because how comes you can't be campaigning and you're a presidential candidate who is campaigning, and you are campaigning to many Kenyans, and you want to tell Kenyans, this is what I'm going to do for you, this one I will not do, and you raise their expectations very high, and when it comes to delivery, you deliver, there is nothing that you deliver to them, and you still continue to make promises, even you are still the government. You know, even the same government promised us of the gas cylinders to be 300 shillings. I think we are almost in June. Well, we are yet to see, and even reducing the cost of living, we are yet to see. That one is still not there, and I don't think that one is their plan. Well, the chief economic advisor, David Ndii, talked about on how they are going to curb the situation. But this is a situation where you find even their prime cabinet secretary creates an office for their spouse, for their nini.
Although they say it is not taxpayer funded. That it is funded by donor organizations, well-wishers.
Do you believe in that?
I can't say otherwise.
Okay. But now, you know, things that we see in the government of the day is that the misplaced priorities which are there up to now, you can't say that they are going to curb the situation that we are in today, because there is no clear plan that they have given out, that this is how we are going to sort the issues to do with the economy. You know, the president, when he was in Kajiado, I think 3 weeks ago, he talked about the bei ya unga is going to reduce up to 150 shillings. You know, you, Ascon, and I, we live in this city. I don't know whether you ever entered into any supermarket and you found out that this unga is 150 shillings. But economy itself is not only unga of 150 shillings. There is sugar, there is fuel. In fact, the EPRA, they review the fuel prices, and it has increased, despite the fact that we were told that this one is going to reduce. Number two, you remember on the fuel issue, the deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, was in Mombasa, receiving a certain consignment. Yeah, for the first time, you see a deputy president to receiving a consignment. We don't know it took us for how long as Kenyans, and which parts was it taken to, and how much were they selling their fuels. Was it different with what we are using in Nairobi or other parts of the country? Today, I think diesel is 160 something, yeah, and SPA is 180, 182, 183, thereabout, and it is still increasing. The government has not given us a clear plan on how they want to curb the current anomaly that we are in, and we are in a very sad situation. That is why you see many Kenyans are talking about the government has the misplaced priorities.
But to be fair, Let's be fair. Are you saying there are no external factors which are exacerbating the situation in which we find ourselves? Because the UN Secretary General, as well as the IMF chief, have both been in the country and agreed that the interest rates currently, as far as sourcing funds externally, make it almost impossible for Kenya to do so. They've talked about the Ukraine-Russia war and its impact on economies such as ours. Although Kenya Kwanza, speaking of doublespeak, had made, had sought to diminish the impact of external factors on the Kenyan economy. But now that they're in office, are you denying that perhaps, they call it the perfect storm, that the Kenya Kwanza administration finds itself in a similar situation? They came in when Kenya was facing a severe drought, so is it fair then to expect more than they're doing presently?
No, Olive. Well, those factors are there. Those factors are there. And you remember the Ukraine war, people talked about it so much. The COVID-19, people talked about it so much. But was only Kenya the only country which was affected? We have our neighbors here in Tanzania. The president of Tanzania was saying some few days back that they are very proud that the government of Tanzania is in a position to raise its own taxes and take care of their people. And in fact, the economy is flowing so well. What is the problem in Kenya? The problem with Kenya is that we have leaders who talk too much and there is less delivery. If we want to put things into action with a clear plan, that is what we lack. If we, during campaigns, you remember the chair of the current chair of the budget committee, Honorable Didi Nyoro, talked about the issue of fuel, that the issue of fuel will have to be reduced in their government because the then government could not reduce it. Yeah, the then deputy president, who is the current president, was saying that if we take the mantle, within 100 days we'll be in a position to have flattened the economy, and everyone, there will be a flow of money in the economy, there will be hustler funds. There's several promises that they made during those times. Why can they now come out and actualize them? You remember, all nation states, they have their own domestic problems. There are certain things which are coming out of the international and the global problems that we face. But what are the plans you have as a government of the day to ensure that the lives and the livelihoods of your people are well catered for and are well protected within your mandate as the government of the day? Those are the plans that we need to see, and we need to see action, not only talking. Yeah.
All right. Nudin, and sorry, you talked about the price. Pricing in Nairobi, super petrol 182.70 cents, diesel 168.40, kerosene 161.13. Nudin, is it a reflection on the president? Is the president's recent actions, where, because he was asked about the global fund and KEMSA, and immediately after that press conference he said, during the press interview, he said, watch this space. Immediately we saw action on that. Is he, and then now we are seeing what is happening with the suspensions over these contaminated sugar. Is he responding to Kenyans' hue and cry?
It's action and reaction. And in politics it sells because it shows that you are more or less a doer, less of a talker. But you see, the sad reality is that what happens after those suspensions or expulsion from office, because you see, at the end of the day, if that story just dies down and we don't get to the bottom of it, then we end up with what has been happening every single administration. Now, there is something you talked about, doublespeak. I told you off air, when you lie, remember your lies. But overall, never lie to yourself. Because you see, at the end of the day, during campaigns, politicians they overpromise. And these promises they give are populist. Some, I remember during even let's forget about the presidents, I remember during the debates you had for governors and members of parliament, some didn't even understand the functions of roles of those offices. I just heard here, which is a shock to me, I just heard that maybe those who are now high-ranking officials in this government didn't understand the state of the debt. Mark you, there were high-ranking officials in the former government, where some were deputy presidents, where some were a majority leader, where we had a lead of the budget committee. So it is a bit shocking, because I believe if today all of you decide to vie for a member of parliament, I'm sure the area you want to stand, you'll do a research and realize what ails these people. So you'll have a plan. So if that is the case, then that is why we are in a penny-wise, pound-foolish kind of scenario, where you're trying to take every single penny from the people, but you end up spending so much more on largesse and things that really don't make sense. And that is why we are going to suffer if this is going to be the situation. Moving on swiftly, I believe being a Kenyan is a miracle. Today morning, I thank God, because checking the dailies, it is all depressing, from gold to sugar and everything. The fact that you can have expired milk in the market, contaminated sugar in the market, and the fact that you have a failing health sector, believe you me, other countries have mafia, but in Kenya, the mafia owns the country. That is what I am saddened today morning. And it is sad because if this is going to happen for the next few years, we won't have a country. And those who are young enough, I believe, just because you voted for a government doesn't mean you can't give it positive criticism. Just because you're looking for a job doesn't mean you turn a blind eye to what ails the people. So I believe we need to, as a young generation, we need to think differently. I heard the comments here on General Ogola. I won't speak too much because it's someone I know personally, but I believe the way that matter was handled is a bit weird. The fact that you have to tell us that you did a certain community a favor by actually having him elected as head of the CDF is actually shocking. And that is my problem. Because the day I stop viewing them and you first as the tribe you come from and see you as a Kenyan is when we'll solve our issues. This issue of you are this tribe, you are this, before we even talk, that is why we are being told of shareholders. And yesterday we have been told that if you're not in UDA, you won't form government, because UDA will be there for 100 years. Now that is UDA's 100 years plan. What is the Kenya plan? That is my question. Because we cannot be solving issues by telling us a certain community is in power. We have a president who comes from a certain region. Are they suffering? Will those taxes in the finance bill, will they affect it? Of course they will. So this issue of a certain community in power, there's nothing like that. It is a certain individual, a certain cabal, a certain friends and family that benefit. So the day we start seeing each other as Kenyans, because those who are in office need to understand something. When you get sworn in, if you are a president, it is for the Republic of Kenya, not the president of Uasin Gishu, Kiambu, or Nairobi. So the day you start realizing that and realize that, hey, I am a member of parliament, I have a duty to represent, legislate, and oversight. Just because you're in Kenya Kwanza does not mean the oversight role you turn a blind eye. Yo sioni, I'm blind there. How are we voting? Vote for the government. That is very wrong, because leaders have to they have to rise beyond petty party lines, because for them they believe I'm waiting for the next election. So there is this nonsense of respect the party leader. What is the party line, party position? What is the Kenyan position? That person that sent you to parliament to represent them. And I am waiting, because you see, the last parliament I gave up a long time ago. This one has the finance bill to give me hope, or to say, you know what, let us wait for the next parliament. Because at the end of the day, if pertinent issues to the people cannot be solved by you as a member of parliament or by as a senator, because now we have issues of devolution. I was saddened when I saw the issue of the appropriation of funds, where certain senators believe because I'm in government, I have to align to what the government wants. What does your county want? If you come from an ASAL area, people are suffering, and you decide to reduce money from, what are you trying to tell us, in essence? So I am waiting to see whether this finance bill will pass, because I was told the government never loses. When the government wants something, it wins. It wins. At the end of the day, the government wins. What about you, Oliver the Kenyan?
You're the government.
When do you win?
Okay, Ascot. Ascot, ameangalia clock akasema woo!
Yeah, because a number of things.
Ascot, two things. One, speaking of double speak. So yes, the president may have taken action on KEMSA and these those involved with this contaminated sugar, but he is also the same president when he came into office, and he was taken to task over the DPP, and he said, go and ask the DPP why those cases were withdrawn or why they were filed in the first place. And then he goes ahead to appoint him Director General NIS. So is the same person who is rewarding a person who admitted You understand? I understand where I'm going with this question. And then number two, as much as we are told by Nurdin here, you know, you're the president of all Kenyans and all that. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta paid a heavy price where Central Kenya is concerned.
And that is what I was coming to. I think when we discuss politics, we need to leave what is in the classroom and go for what actually happens down in the field, because this creates a very different picture. When you're in the classroom, you'll be told that what Kenya looks like is a country that is one community. When in real sense we have 47 different tribes that contribute differently. Is it 42 or 47? 42 different tribes that contribute differently.
47 now.
I think there are roughly 47 now.
47.
That contribute differently to an election that results into the government that then decides what happens in this country. Now, when we start by saying that the president should not consider ethnicity, should not consider tribe and stuff like that, Nurdin should remember as a lawyer that even our constitution acknowledges the aspect of ethnicity and tribe in whatever appointments that are done in government. Actually, there are places where you go for vetting and you'll be told to, you know, categorically state which community you come from or which ethnic extraction you are. So it's important that we acknowledge that the place of tribe and ethnicity in political mobilization in Kenya is very real and is big. And that this, as you have said clearly, cost Uhuru big in the last election. It has caused William Ruto even before, I mean Raila Odinga, when he had to part ways with William Ruto and the Kalenjin community was complaining that Mau Forest, I remember the Mau Forest issue was so big at that time. So we have to understand that the place of, you know, ethnicity and tribes in political mobilization is that big. But also having said that, there's no harm in what William Ruto said, that actually he was put to task by the media to explain how he decided to pick Ogolla and on what basis, when initially he had already, you know, cast aspersions on the character of Ogolla, and he was very clear about it, that looking at the list of the people he had, you know, Ogolla ranked better, he had the merit, and also considering the past history of our community, the Luo community, in regards to this position, there was just everything good about appointing Ogolla in this position, despite all that history that he had. So for me, I don't think it's bad telling somebody that I appointed you because you're from the Luo community, or I appointed you because you're from the Kikuyu community. We must not look at our tribes as though it is illegal to be Kikuyu or it is illegal to be Luo. It is actually something that should bring pride, and you should be happy to be identified as coming from one community. But what you should not do is to use that as an advantage over the rest, or to use it to, you know, infringe on the rights of other people. Having said that, Kemsa issue and the scandals that are coming up right now, for me, I think the president is doing what he could have done, or what is expected of a president of the country. The much that our constitution allows him to do is just to do exactly what he's doing right now. The ball now goes to the court of the DPP and the DCI. And that's why the president said that I want to divorce these people from the funding that comes from other institutions, office of the president or another office elsewhere. Let them be autonomous in how they decide their budgets and how they do their things. That will give them the opportunity to look at things differently, and even maybe to, you know, investigate cases better. You remember the reason why the DPP has been saying that he's dropping so many cases is that the DCI has not been feeding him with proper evidence that can help him back these cases in court. We have so many people, including the current governor of the central bank, Kamau Thuge, who was presented in court, stayed out for a very long time, and in the end the DPP said that they didn't have enough evidence to, you know, continue with the case. We have so many people out there. We have so many careers that have been, you know, messed up just because of, you know, the DPP taking a decision on a matter when he's not very confident about prosecuting the case to the end and resulting into, you know, some very funny things finally. So for me, I think the president is doing what exactly he's supposed to do. The ball is now in the court of the DPP and the DCI. When now we have been told that there's a cabinet secretary and there's an MP who are accused of what is going on with the sugar scandal from that go down there. we need to see what exactly connects these people to what is the nexus between being a cabinet secretary and the sugar scandal. If we get to see this and the DPP has a tight case, I don't think even our judiciary would not want to deal with these matters properly. But even the court will only make a decision on a matter when the DPP has a tight case or has a watertight case that can help. Sorry?
No, it's okay. I need to cut you short because nasikia masimu kwa masikio. So my director is under immense pressure as we speak. So I have to conclude the conversation. I'm sorry.
But also, if I don't say this, it will be an injustice to the Kenyans because it's something he said when he said about ethnic appointments. Article 27 of the Constitution talks about equity of and freedom from discrimination. 27(4) talks about discrimination against people that is race, that is ethnic, that is social origin, disability, and religion. So this issue of shareholders and whatnot is an illegality.
No, okay, gentlemen, we have to take this one offline. So there's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, was the topic. Faithless and little, faithful with much. We've had in studio Fred Makajos, co-convener Movement for Defense of Democracy, Ascot Kabili Youth Policy Analyst, Nurdin Hagai, Advocate of the High Court, and evidence here that Fred is indeed a comrade. Have yourselves a good morning.